Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode here of Duelists and Drunkards. I'm Mr. Panda.
And I'm Rockstar.
This is the podcast that will make you wake up in the morning, look over, and wonder, who is that in my bed?
You did not prep me for that line. I have nothing to say to that.
First up and foremost is current events. We're going to be talking about a few of the conventions we have lined up, and then we're going to be briefly touching upon an incident that's very near and dear to our hearts. We have coming up ColossalCon East in September. Is it in September? I'm pretty sure it's in September. Down the line, we also have another con from the same company, Otakon, down in Danville, Virginia, at the Tank Museum, which I'm really excited to go to. That same weekend, we'll also be appearing at YushiCon. And Rockstar is going to say, but Mr. Panda...
But Mr. Panda...
How can we be two places at once?
How can we be two places at once?
Well, you see, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a high-quality team, like at mainly Battleships...
High quality.
And yet, you are unique, separate souls in this wonderful and expansive universe. You can be in two different locations at the same time. And that's how we're going to do it that particular weekend. So whether you're one of our fans from the South or you're one of the fans back here in Pennsylvania, you can see Manly Battleships content on October 13th at YushiCon in East Stroudsburg or at Conticon at the Tank Museum in Danville, Virginia. Now, there are a bunch of different conventions that will also be doing this coming season. However, because lots of things are still kind of under wraps or they haven't been announced yet, we don't have a whole lot more of them to tell you just yet. One I can tell you about is BonsaiCon. Now, I know a lot of you who are watching don't get down that far south, but if you go or are around Columbia, South Carolina in November, you can hit up BonsaiCon, where I, at least, will be representing Manly Battleships at the convention center there in Columbia, South Carolina. That about wraps it up for the announcements on conventions at the moment. But we do have something else to talk about in current events, and that is Nintendo getting very lawsuit happy. Roxy, take it away.
Yeah, so we have Nintendo suing Love Retro and Love ROMs. And I believe they're suing them for like $2 million and then $150,000 per each ROM. And
But tell us, Rockstar, how much does that add up to?
That's about approximately $100 million.
Oh my God!
And so at this point, Love Retro went offline. Love ROMs has taken down all the Nintendo ROMs. And if anyone is familiar, Emu Paradise has already preemptively removed Nintendo ROMs off their site as well. So...
we're keeping an eye on that because we, of course, are heavily involved in the emulation scene. If you've ever been to one of our panels in the Game Show line, Game Show Imposter Brew, the 8-bit gaming challenge relies heavily on our use of ROMs. Now, don't get us wrong. Our understanding is, from a legal standpoint, Nintendo is perfectly within their rights. Various aspects of the emulation community kind of have existed in a gray area for a very long time now. It seems to only just be now that Nintendo has started to become interested in shutting down those communities.
Well, I believe the argument is it's in browser and they had heavily advertised it. So they feel that Love Retro and Love ROMs are making money off of this, but I highly doubt they made enough money to cover a $100 million lawsuit from it. And not to mention, this generation is...
You don't know how many times that I've played Duck Hunt on there?
Not enough for $100 million.
I have shot a lot of ducks.
But our generation is becoming more internet savvy, and sometimes the first experience into retro games is through emulation, which I feel we should be at least allowing them to experience classic games and all the frustrations and wonderfulness that come from it.
Yeah, one of our game shows would essentially not exist if it weren't for the compatibility and portability of emulated games. So this, of course, is very relevant to us. We don't know how expansive Nintendo's interest is going to be in this area of emulation, But the most major sites do seem to be targeted at this point. Whether or not that's going to affect people like us or yourself there at home with your totally legitimate MAME cabinet, only time will tell.
And, I mean, I still feel like you should buy them legally. I mean, we have the Nintendo, they brought out the NES Mini thing.
And yeah, if you happen to have that instead of an original console with cartridges, I mean, more power to you. Nothing wrong with that.
Of course, support Nintendo, but at the same time...
Cut us some slack, man.
Yeah.
I mean, last time you brought it out, you sold out. Like, you just didn't make enough of them.
Dude, like, I have the Retron 5. And I've been looking for NES games legitimate NES games to play on it. And I got Star Tropics, but it cost me $35. That's a new game. That's a new game.
It's interesting to me that the emulation market, at least for the less legitimate part of the emulation market, has never really impacted the collectible game market. Like, people still go out and buy cartridges every day. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not that's going to be true with Nintendo bringing out their mini consoles and targeting emulation sites, that remains to be seen.
I guess it depends on whether you want the new stuff that Nintendo's coming out with or you want a original one.
And now it's time for our first discussion topic. We're going to be discussing Otakon, as you probably could tell from the title of this episode. We just got back from there this weekend. Very interesting experiences, very good experiences, very tiring experiences.
Very tiring experiences.
And we're going to start off with some fantastic news. There were so many naysayers that at one point I was actually working on an article talking about where do we go from here. Otakon's had a rough couple of years after it had a huge decompression back in Baltimore, where population dropped the year right before they left. There was a small uptick again for the final year in Baltimore, as you might expect. But when they finally did move down to D.C. last year, there was a pretty decent attendance drop to the tune of, I think, about 4,000. And there were a number of concerns raised because, obviously, when you're a large convention like that, any drop is not a great sign. Mm-hmm. But a continual drop over the course of several years and not returning to your original numbers can be very concerning. But the unofficial number that we got was over 29,000 attendees, which is a marked increase compared to last year, which is good. It means people are getting a little more comfortable with the venue, the area. People are finding places to eat and to do photo shoots.
Oh, yeah.
People like me are still discovering new and interesting crevices within the convention center.
Like the cafeteria.
I mean, I did say that last year I was still discovering new hallways on Sunday. This year, I discovered for the first time that there was actually a cafeteria in the basement of the front of the convention center. The downtown dining area. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, I thought that was just like a walkway. I did not realize that was an actual eatery area.
They have some pretty good stuff down there. You can get like Papa John's.
Oh yeah, you can get like half a sub for like $12. But I mean, it's Firehouse subs, so I mean, if you have to buy overpriced food, it's probably the place to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good salmon teriyaki down there. So.
I had delicious Nando's, not at the convention center.
Yeah, that's kind of the specific part of it. Not at the convention center.
I love Nando's. If you hadn't guessed.
He really does. I could take it or leave it. But that's just because I can't take spicy food.
Yeah, and in fairness, Nando's, the base Nando's flavor has a decent amount of spice in it.
Well, I got the chicken Caesar wrap, and I guess they didn't have the normal chicken they would have put in there, so they had to give me peri chicken.
Oh.
And
okay, that makes more sense.
They told me, what kind of spice level do you want? And I looked at their levels, and I'm like, can I get it with no spice? And she goes, oh, you want it plainish. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go and bite into it. The first half was okay. By the second half, I swear I felt like my whole face was burning off. I really am a wimp. I know.
Now we're going to go over a couple of things that we did at Otakon panel-wise, but I want to keep talking about food now that we're on it. We also had an awesome dinner with the rest of the Panelists United crowd over at the Capitol Burger, which is right across the street from the convention center on the corner there. And now, it is not the cheapest food in the world.
No.
It's just a half tick above mid-range for pricing. But if you like burgers, their food is quite good. Now,
it was worth every penny.
I feel like if it was $2 cheaper, I would eat there far more frequently. But the food was quite good. I had a bacon burger that had candied bacon, which was a really interesting experience. They had halfway decent pickles that they just serve out there like a freebie thing. Mm-hmm. And Rockstar, tell them all about your special burger.
Oh, I had the roasted mushroom and Swiss burger, and oh my god! So
very potent.
It's known that I am the slowest eater in the world. I'm always the last one eating. I did not put that burger down for a second. That was the fastest I went through a burger. It was the best burger I think I've ever had. So I'm gonna make a yearly trip there.
If you're going to splurge on one place, the Capital Burger is a great place. There's plenty of other places to eat in the area. You're right next to Chinatown. And if you're looking for pizza, I mean, there are the standard places that will deliver, but there's also a really decent place called, I think it's Pizza Dora, right?
I believe that's where we went.
Pizza Dora. Now I'm gonna warn you, don't buy the cheese pizza.
I didn't have any of the cheese pizza, but I know everybody complained in our room about the cheese pizza.
I don't know if it was that particular pizza or if it really was the pepperoni just really brought out whatever base quality was there. But compared to the pepperoni, the cheese was jank. Just skip it. Pay the extra $1 and change and get pepperoni.
Pepperoni was good.
Honestly, even the second night, I had a slice of pepperoni and pineapple, and I'm with you, fam. All right, I get it.
I'm not pepperoni and pineapple. Why wasn't
I'm with
I
you.
told?
I'm with the real people out there, not you. Freaking communists.
I love pepperoni. I love.
But it was decent, and part of that reason was how awesome the pepperoni brought out the pizza.
How was the pineapple on it?
It was fine, but only because of the pepperoni. I don't mind pineapple on pizza, but it's kind of like a culinary faux pas.
Dude, tangerine on pizza.
Let's just not go into this anymore. We're talking about Otakon.
Okay, fine. So I'll tell them about my adventure. I was looking for breakfast foods, and unfortunately, I got there too late for breakfast foods. But if you want something that's, I wouldn't say maybe $1 above Subway prices, but definitely better than Subway, go to Potbelly's. That was a short walk to get there. They have coffee shakes. You can get malts there too, and it comes with like free little cookies. And I had a mushroom and Swiss melt. At this point, I'm gonna look like a mushroom freak, but with avocado, and it's delicious.
Man, mushrooms can be good.
Yeah. And I've had the avocado at Subway. It always tastes like fake, and like it's been sitting in the freezer too long. No, these it felt like they literally took it out of the avocado that day. It was fresh. It was delicious. So
I don't think you have to convince anyone that Potbelly's is a decent restaurant. I seem to recall that it's like a chain. So I know other people who have eaten at it.
Well, I've never seen the chain before, so forgive me. I literally have never been to a Potbelly's. I've never seen a Potbelly's before, but amazing food.
Well, before we get into any other personal experiences, let's talk a little bit about the panels. Now, we did 4 at Otakon, as you hopefully heard last week. The first of which was Transformers: The Birds and the Bumblebees. Now, this is one we've done quite a lot, so we were happily right on top of things, and we got a halfway decent crowd considering it was 9 a.m. Friday, Otakon, and I was actually really surprised that they didn't have the line clog, like the backlog from bag check that is at the new Otakon location. That didn't happen until Saturday. So it was actually pretty easy to get into the convention center. No problems with setup. Seems like everyone had a decent time. And of course, I get to do a special little sketch during the Transformers panel with audience participation. So you probably haven't seen it yet, but if you have, I'm sorry, you may have already seen it, but if you haven't, you definitely need to come by the next incarnation of the Transformers panel so that you can see just how awesome America versus Japan is.
You really love that skit.
I actually really, really do.
Oh, I admit it. I love that skit too. Are you trying to remember what our next panel was?
The next panel we did was on Saturday.
It was a huge gap between first panel and second panel, and it was David Bowie, right?
Yep, David Bowie. Full title now, David Bowie, the rock and roll space invader from Japan, which was actually in the AMD theater, which was an interesting change because it's run by a completely different department, which actively decided to kind of pluck that out of the panel pool and put it in their room for kind of a change of pace, because the demographics for people who go down to the AMD theater tends to be a little bit different from the average con-goer, because they're running mostly video-centric stuff there. But apparently it went over very well. Now, I was only there for about the first 20 minutes or so, because unfortunately it was back to back with one of our other events, so I had to go set up. But Rockstar can tell you all about it.
Yeah, I felt the panel went pretty well. I felt like it was really well received. We always end it a little, so that that one tends to need a little bit of a Q&A afterwards because of how sad it is near the end. And I felt this year we got really good advice of a little bit more things to add to the panel that we'll definitely take into consideration. So we always love hearing the fans respond and give us more information. Most of the time we already know, because Streak has done a really good job at doing the research, and there's just no way he can fit every single thing that he wants to in that panel to be on time and get out.
What, Roxy? You're saying that there are limits to what can be fit into a 60-minute block, which is more frequently like 50 minutes at most conventions?
I mean, I think that's partly why we started the podcast to begin with. We want to be able to tell you a little extra tidbits, because the research that we have can fill up a book, and yet no one really gets to see all that behind the scenes all the time. Now, with the David Bowie, it's really fun because while you may have gone and seen it at Otakon, the next time you go see it, there will definitely be changes, because we're always constantly putting in new references. We're always finding new references every day. So there should always be something new there for you to find out.
Next up on the roster was You're On and You Should Feel Bad. This happened in panel 1, right after the David Bowie panel, which incidentally, complete tangent, you guys got up there a lot faster than I expected.
I was actually surprised with how fast we got up there. And we actually managed to catch almost all of your panel. I think we only missed maybe
you actually
5
came in.
minutes.
Yeah, you came in during the warm-up round.
Yeah.
Which I was just not expecting at all.
Neither were we. So that was a good thing. We were actually, it was like we were in 2 places at once, guys.
For those of you who are unaware or who didn't bother listening in last time, You're On and You Should Feel Bad is basically one of our headliners right now. It's a performance piece where we kind of take a frequently used format that you do see on the internet, which is you see a bit of the rage coming through in criticizing media. Now, the way we try to do things a little differently is that rather than talking about the things that kind of everyone knows is bad, or, you might still like it, but, the things that we like that everyone knows is bad, we know is bad. Why do I need to sit there and tell you about it? Not only do we know it's bad, but there are much more successful people out there commenting on things like that, all the way up through Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, who spends a lot of time talking about why bad things are bad and reminding you why they're bad. So with that niche kind of filled, the approach we take is that we actually focus on things that are critically acclaimed, the good shows, things that you are supposed to like as a fan of a particular genre or a particular medium. And we tear it to shreds. And I think that we successfully did that if the audience response is anything to go by. We packed the room by the time we really started building up steam. And
People kept coming in, too, in the middle of the panel. We still had
a couple people who were just like, oh, I can't deal with this. But don't worry, more were willing to come in.
Mm-hmm. I love it when we pack the room.
I mean, unlike some unlike some other times where, you have that kind of rolling attendance, we knew that this one was going well because the audience was just so responsive. Sometimes if you have one earlier in the day, you just have people who are sitting there for the next panel. But it's like, no, everyone seemed to be having a good time, which was very pleasing for me in particular. Because once I get on that train of rage, I just don't stop.
I mean, you said you didn't even realize I was on stage until I made my first comment. So,
that is true.
When you get in that performance piece, you really go for it. So I always love watching you do that panel.
Apparently, really Babs did too, because what she noticed most she claims that she visually saw the heat radiating off of my body. Dude,
I felt it. I was 2 seats down and I felt it.
It was a very fulfilling moment for me personally. I don't know. I always enjoy doing that panel.
Well, it's one of those panels that when the audience responds, especially the way they did at Otakon, you feed off of it, and the performance becomes just that much more intense, I feel.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the weird thing was, I don't know if it was timing or what, but last year we did not quite fill the room. And this year it felt like it was the exact opposite. And I mean, I assume that partly is because of word of mouth, partly because there were more people there. But I mean, I hope that in some way that the brand name for You're Wrong, You Should Feel Bad is finally starting to get a little more traction. People know that it's a good time and that they're willing to come out and see it, even though it's... Well, I saw that last year. Well, I know it's going to be different this year.
Well, Sunday, we still had people stopping us to tell us the panel was amazing. So I feel like the recognition is becoming so to the point where people are stopping us and saying, hey, you're the Manly Battleships. That was a really cool panel that you just put on. That was all Saturday, Sunday.
The last one we did was Kurosawa, the Celluloid Samurai. Now, that was Sunday afternoon. Right, I did not actually realize it at the time. It was one of the last panels of the convention. There was nothing after us in that particular room. And, I mean, it went fine. It's a panel that I'm never quite satisfied with. And in some ways, that's a good thing. In some ways, it's whatever. The attendance was interesting because no one from You're Wrong, You Should Feel Bad apparently showed up. Or at least no one really wanted to admit that they had gone to see You're Wrong, You Should Feel Bad. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 people there who raised their hand. But I know that some people who wanted to go to You're Wrong, You Should Feel Bad, who were in that polled audience, couldn't even get in. Which, again, satisfying. Mm-hmm. But Kurosawa, the Celluloid Samurai, deals with a particular thesis of mine about one of those common elements I see throughout Kurosawa's films. And this time, I had the advantage of finally getting around to having completed what he calls something approaching an autobiography. Kurosawa never really wrote a full autobiography of himself. The one that he did write, he wrote fairly late in his life, but he only wrote about his life up into the 1950s, right as Rashomon came out. Part of the thing I think about when I go through it, and perhaps the reason he didn't write a part 2 of his autobiography, is in the epilogue he talks about how his work, and perhaps I think the way he phrases it is the work of artists in general, exhibits a better accounting of who he is as a person than anything he could write in an autobiography. And I think that part really actually spoke to me, and I wish I had more directly incorporated that particular phrase into the panel. But it's a panel that I find very personally rewarding in that I get to talk about some of the films that I really enjoy, because it never quite feels like the same panel every time. And part of that's by design. Part of it's like, well, how much of this awesome material can I fit into the space of 50 minutes or 60 minutes in the case of Otakon? And that's why when you come to the Kurosawa panel more than once, I've been working slowly on retooling it to better fit my vision over the past couple of years. Actually, this is the first time that I actually managed to work in a scene from Dreams, which...
I really, really love that scene.
It's
really cute.
If you've ever wanted to experience an art house film ever, or if you are a fan of art house films in general, Dreams is really the one that you should try to check out. Even if you don't buy your own copy on Blu-ray, and then, you have to have a lot of patience trying to get it to play in your home computer, and then fail miserably, and then just give up and come over to your friend's house to watch it.
Yeah, that's why we own a Blu-ray player. Just for you, Panda.
Borrow it, rent it, watch it on a legitimate source if they manage to put it out on like Netflix or something. I don't think they have. But if they ever do, you should definitely check it out. It's a source of some very interesting segments. And I think it really gives you a flavor, unlike some of his other films that are a little more action-oriented. It gives you a really good flavor for his interest and passion for the No theater. The initial segment in Dreams, which deals with the Fox wedding, is entirely in the style of No theater. It was actually a professional dance troupe that was going around and popular at the time that he hired to do that scene.
Well, it certainly shows.
Yeah,
in that scene.
It's a beautifully executed scene, and it's one of the more elegant ones in the movie. It's interesting because Dreams opens with a wedding and ends with a funeral, and it really communicates, in my opinion, the state of Kurosawa's kind of inner self in this last stage of his career, because Dreams, Rhapsody in August, and Madadayo are his three final films that he makes, are made in very close succession, and they all have something to do with, I think, him looking back at his life and looking at the state of his career. Madadayo, in particular, is about this retiring professor who's bringing back people that he's had influence on over the years. So, Dreams is both an excellent piece on its own and is a really good place to find some insight into the enigma that is Akira Kurosawa, the man. That's all I really have to say about that panel.
I was going to say, I actually experienced that more as a con-goer than a panelist myself, since I wasn't sitting up there with you. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. The talking about how you couldn't get all the material in reminded me that I don't think you even got to announce the movie that the post-mortem movie that they might be making.
I can't remember the exact title. It's like The Mask of Death or something. It's based off of an Edgar Allan Poe story, but it's a script that Kurosawa had written, and he actually wrote a bunch of stuff that's never gotten around to being published. I'm not even sure if all of them are actually available. Some of them might actually be lost, and there is some renewed interest in bringing old Kurosawa scripts out to the big screen, but it is exciting to see that might be a possibility. So you should keep your eye on that if you went to that panel or would like to see it in the future, or are just a fan of Kurosawa films in general. And if you're not, you should be. The only other thing that I would like to talk about right now at Otakon, maybe a little bit about the location. The food selection in general around the DC area where we're located for Otakon is actually pretty fantastic. And despite what some people have said in the cosplay and photo shooting community, if you just walk one block in any direction, you have the potential to find a lot of excellent photo shoots. I mean, it feels busier because the streets are arranged differently. The blocks are arranged differently. But honestly, the time and the effort put into walking to some of these locations is, in fact, shorter than some of the locations that you used to go to back in Baltimore. I'm thinking, of course, of those huge fountains. Like, that's actually not a short walk.
No,
I mean,
not.
It can take a little bit to get over there, even if you're using the Skyway.
I mean, on my way to Potbelly's, the church that there was a photo shoot at was like maybe not even a minute walk. It was literally like, boom, you're there. And there was like 3 or 4 people taking photos all over this church, like set up professional photos. So,
and Massachusetts Avenue, which is one street over, has a lot of park benches, publicly maintained public spaces. They even have some kind of wave pool fountain section right outside of, I think it's 600 Massachusetts Avenue. There's all sorts of things you can do and explore, guys. There's a lot of room there, and despite whatever flaws you might still find in either the traffic, maybe the parking, maybe the metro, if you're unlucky enough to have to come in on the metro when they're one-tracking it, overall, if there's any criticism to be had with Otakon, there is still a contingent of the attendees that don't sit too well with the bag check thing. But I mean, really, you got to take that in stride. Even if it is mostly about the perception of safety as opposed to like cavity searching you.
I mean, what they give them a wooden spoon.
The wooden spoon. I almost forgot about the wooden spoon.
I will admit there was that one security guard. I love this guy.
Stop it!
No.
Stop it! You cannot bring the machine gun in here.
The one security guard at the front.
No bombs. You can't bring that. Black powder. Oh, that could be used in cooking. You can bring that in. Kidding.
I can't.
They do their jobs.
They do.
I promise.
They do their jobs. But the security guard at the front entrance the first day was like having everybody spin around, and then it was like, oh yeah, give me that shoulder. Oh my god, I love that guy. He was great. He was nobody was expecting it. He actually had a group of guys who were very reluctant. They're like, do we have to do it? And he's like, yeah, everyone's got to do it. When they went to do the shoulder, they were like, oh, he's just being fun. And I'm like, yeah, come on. I saw it from the beginning. He was very high energy, very good. So,
and it's nice to have those kinds of people there, too, because that makes the process that much more simple. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, other than one backlog period on Saturday, overall, it seemed to go pretty efficiently. So, I mean, if it's going to be a permanent inconvenience, it's not something that I think that is so huge that it's a deal breaker. And certainly attendance doesn't indicate that it was a deal breaker because it was there last year, and we're finally seeing those numbers kick up for this year.
Mm-hmm. It was really good.
All things being equal, and unless that $1 billion revamp of the Baltimore area Inner Harbor ever goes through, which no indication that it will, Otakon is stuck in DC for at least 3 more shows, and quite frankly, I'm willing to put in the extra hour to keep going there for even longer.
I hope it stays there. I hope it stays there.
Because DC is actually quite nice, guys. So I hope you are as pleased with the new location as we are.
Yes.
Now we're going to introduce a new segment on this show, Story Time. I'm going to tell you a story about my first Otakon. This would be back in 2006 at the Baltimore Convention Center. This was a time in my life when I thought it would be a good idea to cosplay. Ooh. And I'm not talking about the stuff that I've done more recently, which is just awesome. I mean, full-on classic cosplay with a stand-in character from an existing anime.
You mean shitposting cosplay that you've been doing lately? That's what it should be called now.
I'll just start a new blog. Shitposting cosplay. Shitplay.
I'm sorry, continue on with your story time.
Now, keep in mind, I've been egged on by my sister, who is a very big fan of the show Gravitation. This is a show that I've been shown the entirety of. We've watched it in club, and is not that difficult to cosplay if you have some clothes and, like, one wig.
Well, I mean, that could be quite... That's like a lot of cosplays there, Panda.
It's just plain clothes. Plain clothes. I'm not talking about a fancy costume. It's plain clothes. It was like a suit that I already owned.
I'm sorry.
Not high effort. Let's try that.
There we go. Those are the words.
Now...
Did I throw you off track?
Maybe just a little bit.
I'm sorry.
What it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, is that I made a mistake that year. One that I just could not anticipate being a young, strapping, svelte, and attractive teenager. I decided to cosplay Eri Yuki.
Pics or it didn't happen?
If you've seen Gravitation, you know the character I'm talking about. You know, he's the seimei of the relationship, and is the one that everyone wants to fawn over, which is fine, except there was a big problem. The problem was that, for some reason, at that year's Otakon, there were a lot of shuichis. A ton. Think like 50. There was going to be this huge Gravitation photo shoot. And my sister told me to go down there for the Gravitation photo shoot. Which, you know, I'm an obliging fellow. I'm going to go do that. So, I'll walk over to the side of the convention center that actually has the fountains. You remember the one. And I get on the escalator and I start heading down. And then it's too late. As I'm coming down the escalator, I notice that there are a lot of those Shuichis. They all showed up for that photo shoot. What I did not immediately realize was that I was the only Iriyuki cosplayer at Otakon that year, for reasons I still cannot fathom.
Everyone wants to be bottom.
And by the time I realized what was happening, one had already slowly turned around and saw me coming, and they knew who I was. And she started screaming. And then everyone else turned, and like a wave, they all turn and start screaming at me. And I spent the next hour of my life in a debaucherous, medieval experience of glomps and spanking. And there was a time, ladies and gentlemen, where yaoi paddles were an approved prop at Otakon. And let's just say, I was pulled into some interesting activities. And it wasn't me getting the smacks. Because like a dumb little teenager, I just went with it. Now, keep in mind, we finally get through this arduous process, but it's not over. Two of these characters, one dressed as a dog, Shuichi's dog costume phase, and the other one, man, I don't even remember what she was dressed up as. I think she was in the she was Shuichi in the Sailor Scout uniform.
Oh my god.
They both took one of my arms and led me away on some glorious, sadistic adventure. And they dragged me up the escalators, and we were going down the main hall back towards the other side of the con center, where we were going to network.
Very
and as I am being
friendly there.
As I am being dragged down the hall by these characters, I suddenly spy a friendly face. My good friend, Ryan, who is an officer of the club in which I am a member and is responsible for my well-being. I see him, and he looks over at me, and our eyes meet, and I reach out to him with one arm and say to him, "Ryan, help!" And he looks at me, and he squints a little bit, as if not quite sure what's happening. And then he goes, "Goodbye, Panda." And that was my first Otakon.
Oh, Panda. The stories you could tell.
It was a good time.
It was something.
Now we're moving on to our next discussion topic, which is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. We got 67 characters
67.
coming out. The most recent 3 have been Simon Belmont,
Richter,
and I
King
guess
K. Rool.
the one you're most excited about, King K. Rool.
I'm excited about that.
Any particular reason?
Because I love Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong was the second game I had ever played in my entire life, so it's kind of
What was the first?
Yoshi's Island.
Oh, okay.
That one should have been obvious, considering Yoshi's Island is my favorite game of all time. But yeah, Donkey Kong was the second game I've ever actually completed. On top of that, and so I always just loved all the characters from Donkey Kong. Plus, back when I was like a little kid, I actually watched the awful Donkey Kong.
Oh my god! I know exactly what you're going to say.
I owned it on VHS.
You're talking about the PS2 graphics one, right?
Yeah, the one where they had like the crazy
He's the king of Congo Bongo.
Oh my god! I loved it. I loved it as a kid.
Oh my word!
I know it's crap now, but back as a kid, I would rewatch that poor VHS a lot. So there's my embarrassing thing. And then, so we're gonna move on to the scandal with Luigi, huh? Luigi,
My
Mario.
favorite's Pikachu.
Pikachu. Well, they have the Wii Fit character now. And
You know who's not in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? Waluigi.
Oh my god. So
I mean, he's an assist trophy.
yeah, you realize that that's actually been brought up to Nintendo of America, and they're like, Sakurai is well aware that you guys want Waluigi. Like, we are well aware of that.
Look, all I'm saying is it seems very unfair to have Daisy in the main body of the game, but Waluigi is confined to the same status as Starfy. Most of you don't even know what that is. Google it. Starfy. Also an assist trophy.
I will be honest. I am upset that Waluigi.
Dark Samus is a separate character, but they can't put Waluigi in.
Wait. You want to go through all? Dark Pit is its own character now. You can use your own Mii fighter. My problem is I totally agree that he should be a playable character. But at the same time, I'm devil's advocate, and you realize he has no backstory.
Who cares? He has no backstory. Well, who else on here has a great backstory? Okay, some of them do, but I don't know. Let's take a look here.
Oh,
Who's lacking?
Where's Duck Hunt? I know Duck Hunt's on there somewhere.
Yeah, what kind of story does Duck Hunt have? A genocide. Yeah, real exciting stuff there. Kirby sucks and blows.
Oh my god. Villager.
Yeah, real exciting. Great. I mean, at least Waluigi is the opposing side of an existing character. It would make sense. I don't understand. But Bowser Jr. is in this.
Yes, Bowser Jr.
Oh, my word. I have no words for this. I mean, in fairness, I've fallen off the map with Smash a little bit, but it's still a really fun game when people aren't playing it like a competitive fighting game, which it's not. Dude. It's a party game, guys. It's a battle royale. You're supposed to play with items. Stop killing fun.
Oh, wait, they're turning off stage hazards now, so you can now turn those off. So I'm sure that's going to be part of the competition now, too. Which I'm like, why? That's part of the fun of having a stage.
Do you guys actually like playing video games? I'm just curious. Like, if all you want to do is play a fighting game, there's something called Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. With no hazards, no
Mortal
items.
Mortal Kombat has some hazards. Like
that doesn't really count. Arena games often have that kind of mechanic. Haven't you ever played Tekken?
No, actually.
If I want to play a fighting game, I'll play Tekken. Or Tekken Tag Team. That's fun. I want to have fun with Smash, but I only want to have fun with Smash in the context of its actual purpose, which is a party game. Actually, I had a fun conversation with a guy from my college who actually ran they renamed it to address this issue, the Smash and Fighting Game Club. And some people are like, well, that seems redundant. I'm like, no, because go figure. The president that I'm referring to, I can't remember his first. I think his name was Dan. Mm-hmm. Was actually working on a master's thesis in the subject of social gaming, and was discussing the issue of how Smash actually is not a fighting game, because you can use it and play it as if it is, but one of the things that we came to agree on was I play a lot of StarCraft, which is the classic RTS game from Blizzard. And it has a mode in multiplayer called UMS, or Use Map Settings. And you can completely change the nature of the game from a full RTS strategy resource game into something else. You can turn it into an arena fighter MOBA style thing. In fact, to many people, it is from the UMS maps on StarCraft that MOBAs became a thing with Aeon of Strife. There's a huge amount of customizable settings within that if you use special map editors. So yeah, you can use another game to make something else. And that's what people are essentially doing. Official tournament rules or non-official tournament rules. You're not playing the game the way it's designed. You're playing it with restrictions that make it something different. So, I mean, if you want to do that, if you want to dedicate your time and or career to it, if you are a professional gamer, I mean, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to tell you how to play your game, but don't show up to my party and tell me that I have to turn off items because you don't know how to play the actual game.
The other thing is, like, for me, and this is coming from somebody who just plays a lot of party games and, like, a little fighting games, I noticed that with Smash it's a lot easier to, like, know how to fight. So, you're not like, oh, if I do back, A and B, it does this move and that move. Whereas, like, if you're playing, even, like, I have more knowledge of, like, Injustice, even though I have played Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Injustice even still has, like, oh, if you want to knock him out of the arena and go to a different part of the arena, you have to do, like, this, and this move, you know? So, Smash does have a little bit of those, but I feel like the skill level increases monumentally in what you're actually doing with the controller in order to control your character. Whereas Smash, you're kind of like, well, I'm at like 185% damage, and I better hope no one knocks me off the stage.
How much do you want to bet that they'll add Spyro before they add Waluigi?
Oh yeah, they'll definitely will.
Spyro, first expansion character post-release. The final Smash. Even Spyro shows up.
Well, there's one more news that got everybody all wound up about Smash, and it's when they announced Simon and Richter. They seem to have killed off Luigi.
Oh no!
And so Twitter was ablaze with R.I.P. Luigi Mario at 35. To the point where Nintendo was like, guys, Luigi's okay. It was just literally to show how much of a badass Simon and Victor are for, like, basically fighting off these monsters.
He pulled an Ash Ketchum. That could be taken a lot of different ways. Yeah, he's okay, guys.
He's okay.
Calm down.
But I just think it's because we just had the Waluigi issue, and so, like, they show the Grim Reaper taking out Luigi's soul, and it was like, no, we're done. Oh, and then they have that interesting conspiracy theory, if you haven't heard about this yet.
Do tell.
The most recent, again, the same one with Simon and Richter after you get the little trailer, Sakurai usually talks afterwards. And he's sitting there with a purple and yellow chair behind him. And now everyone's wondering, are those just two random chairs? Or is that hinting at a Waluigi thing?
I guess we'll find out, won't we?
And someone's memed it and said, that yellow looks more like green. Barney's confirmed. So we might see Barney before Waluigi.
Oh, my word. Now we're going to move on to a familiar segment. If you were here for last week's episode, we're going to do a list of the week. Yay! So exciting. This week's list is going to be 5 iconic movies with forgotten sequels. I hope you're super excited about this one. This is actually one that I've wanted to do for a very long time and almost did as a separate video back in the day, before we all realized list videos are terrible. So we would much rather have it be just part of the wider show. So I hope that you'll enjoy these little tidbits of information that we've dug up in our movie-going experiences. Or at least I have. Rockstar apparently hasn't seen too many of these, but I have. So I'm really excited to share this information with you.
I've seen like one of these and a part of a music video of the other.
Number 1 is True Grit from 1969, starring our favorite Western actor, Mr. John Wayne. And Rockstar only knows mostly from Reputation because she's a big fan of The Birdcage.
Well, no, I do actually have a movie of John Wayne's that I...
Really? Tell me.
Unless I'm... No, I'm pretty sure I know The Quiet Man.
Oh, you have seen The Quiet Man.
I love The Quiet... That is Streak and I's like relationship movie that we watched almost every anniversary. We love The Quiet Man.
Oh, man. The man
if I could honeymoon in that little Ireland town, I would.
I mean, the man who shot Liberty Valance is the superior John Wayne movie, but The Quiet Man is also good.
I love Quiet Man.
In any case, we're talking about True Grit, which is the movie that finally got John Wayne his Oscar. I think he had advanced so far in his career, and it was only then that he had gotten anything in the way of real Hollywood recognition. Now, one of the other topics we're going to be covering tonight touches on this wider issue with the Academy, but he was recognized for his role in True Grit with the infamous line, "Fill your hands, you son of a bitch." What is not so well remembered was its sequel, Rooster Cogburn. And Rooster Cogburn is, of course, the title character and was the main male lead in the original, who originally helped out this girl who was basically trying to enlist him in a quest. Rooster Cogburn, unfortunately, does not follow in the footsteps of the original. It only has something like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. And sadly, is not the finest entry in the John Wayne catalog. Frankly, unless you're a completionist, you can probably skip it. The second movie that we're going to be talking about is Purple Rain.
Hey, that one I've watched too.
Purple Rain came out in 1984 and was immediately recognized by many people as the apex of Prince's accomplishments in terms of meeting his artistic achievement with monetary achievement, because both, for some reason, it just came together. And this movie actually won an Oscar for a now semi-defunct category called Best Original Musical. There just weren't really enough entries after a certain point to continue it forward. And while I've discovered that that category actually does still exist in the Academy under a different name, there have never been enough nominees to bring it back. I think the minimum requirement is 3 to actually bring the category back onto the roster.
That would make sense.
Now, I mean, I think that Purple Rain was deserving.
I agree.
But I also noticed that one of its competitors that year was The Muppets Take Manhattan. So, I mean, anyone's guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally love that movie. And I do believe it's deserving of its category. It's just at times when you're watching it, it's like, oh yeah, this was 80s. This is totally the 80s. It did come out in the 80s, right?
It did come out in the 80s.
Yeah.
Its sequel, depending on how you like to reckon decades, came out a little bit later. In 1990, they released another Prince movie, Graffiti Bridge, which is a direct sequel to Purple Rain that most people have no idea exists. And it's terrible. Save yourself the trouble.
I mean, I have. I haven't seen it.
I think it has something like a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. No one needs to see it. It's not that good.
It's in black and white, isn't it?
No, I don't believe it is. I think it was shot in regular color. But I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I haven't watched Graffiti Bridge. For reasons that I'm highlighting here. Graffiti Bridge, from the few clips that I recall seeing, is just boring.
Did he go to art house with it?
I haven't watched the whole movie.
Oh, well, I was just wondering if you could gauge that from the few clips you have seen.
I mean, I do remember that it's focused in around a bridge that actually no longer exists, an actual bridge down up in his home state. That was the Graffiti Bridge. It's where people went to hang out and spray paint stuff because, you know, the 80s. That was a big thing back then. But no, as you might expect, it was not very well received by critics. I've been led to believe that the music in it, the album, did decently. It wasn't the most well received music of all time, but it certainly did better than the movie.
Well, I mean, it's Prince, so I would assume the music would at least be better than the movie.
I mean, there are people who have very divergent opinions on things like Raspberry Beret, so I mean, I don't know.
I love that song.
Never mind.
just move on.
We're going to move on. Number 3 is Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, based on the original The Incredible Journey, based on the novel. The reason that we want to highlight Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, which was released in 1993, is because it's one that sticks a lot more in people's memories. Lots of people saw this as children in the 90s on VHS or in the theater, less likely. But I knew a ton of people own this movie on home video cassette. I don't own a DVD. I still own the VHS of this movie. And it's about these three animals that that believe they've been separated from their family. What's actually happened is that they've been dropped off at this farm while they move out to the city. And they decide that they can't stand waiting around for them. And so they actually set off across the wilderness to reunite with their family. Very a very touching film with a lot of adventurous and borderline depressing moments if you get into it. I imagine most of you are familiar with the plot or at least have seen it and know that it has a happy ending. Unfortunately, they decided they really needed to make a sequel, which was Homeward Bound 2, Lost in San Francisco.
The Quest for More Money.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, it has a higher rating on Rotten Tomatoes than some of the other entries on this list, but it is not worth your time. It is definitely... I think I would rather watch Free Willy 2 than Homeward Bound 2. Now, and Free Willy 2 might not have even had any real orcas in it. It might have actually all been animatronics, depending on who you ask on the production team. I mean, it has a couple moments, but Free Willy barely glanced under the wire for a halfway decent film. And let me tell you, Homeward Bound 2 just doesn't match up to the original, and you should probably just skip it if you haven't already. Number 4 is going to be a little bit of an oddball. Maybe not as many of you have seen it, but I think it does meet the qualifications for an iconic film. It's Splash, starring Tom Hanks.
It's iconic for something.
Oh, it's iconic.
For being the 80s.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of entries in the 80s here. 1984 Splash, starring Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah. Now, this is one of those, offbeat, what some people call sex comedies. I mean, even though there's nothing explicit in it, it's.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, that's what people call it. It's I don't know. I don't know how to describe the genre other than there's two people, they fall in love, and it's implied that they have sex. But this showed on the Disney Channel, so I mean, it still has to be very tasteful. And in addition to the talent of Tom Hanks, there's also John Candy, who plays his brother and business partner. Splash is about a mermaid who helped save this little boy, Tom Hanks, as a child, and comes out and pulls a Little Mermaid story. She turns into a human briefly, but at random points will spontaneously pour salt in the bathwater and jump in and become a mermaid again for a little bit. I think that's actually my favorite scene in the movie. It's when he's like, "Oh, you taking a bath? Can I come in?" And she's like, "No!" And just starts flopping on the floor.
Oh my God.
He's like, "What's wrong? Is there something going on in there?" Yeah. And Splash 2, which had none of the decent writing, none of the same actors, and none of the offbeat good feeling that actually makes the original movie worth watching more than once. Something that I like to point to as just one of those semi-obscure movies that actually leaves me with a nice warm feeling after I've watched it. And it's unfortunate that the sequel had to be made at all. But if you've never seen Splash, you should definitely check that out. Splash 2, TOO.
See what I did there?
Ha ha ha. Wordplay in the title, guys.
I get it.
Splash 2 does not have the same recognition from me, or as far as I know, anyone else important. The last entry on our list is one that Rockstar has actually seen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the 1975 movie, The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Freudian slip much?
You awaited me saying the title with anticipation. The Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975, which I hope you all know and love to some degree, or if you know it and hate it, that's entirely up to you.
Dude, how could I not watch this one? I mean, I swear every Halloween it's, "Hey, Roxy, you've got to come see this."
I have my own personal feelings about the extent to which the fandom has gone with that film, but it's a charming, nice, it is technically low budget by our standards, nice, low budget science fiction A-lister movie that just brought a whole lot of interesting aspects of fandom to the late period of the science fiction fandom community. Like, people who are fans of Rocky Horror aren't even necessarily in the science fiction community. And it has its own, like, homegrown mythos that just sprung up around it. From its original stage show back in London to the U.S. show to the essentially a world tour, and then finally coming out with a major Hollywood film, which didn't do well upon initial release, but did find its way into the hearts of midnight viewers everywhere. Now, we technically cheated a little bit with this one, because in 1981... the release of the movie Shock Treatment. Technically speaking, Shock Treatment is not the official sequel of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. There allegedly is a completely different script that's out there that is an official sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it's never really been verified or confirmed. The one that's out there has never been owned up by the original writer, so we don't know if that's ever true. But Shock Treatment does deal with Brad and Janet, and spins a very different kind of tale. None of this, well, with the exception of the creator himself, there's really not a whole lot of people, I believe, no one important, who shows up in both movies.
Wait a minute.
It's been a while since I've seen Shock Treatment, though.
I know. Streak
obviously,
has
Susan
watched
Sarandon
it.
isn't in it.
I'm trying to remember.
Tim Curry's not in it.
No, but the one butler, the one who originally opened the door.
Yeah, that's the creator.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, he's in there.
Yeah, I mentioned him.
Sorry.
That's fine. And unfortunately, like, there's some interesting... There are the threads of something, like, interesting historical commentary in it. Like, consumerism and all that stuff. And there's even one or two decent musical numbers. I know Streak is a fan of Little Black Dress. I'm a fan of, I don't remember if this is actually the title of the song, but I think it's called Good Night. It's like a semi-lullaby piece, where the camera kind of pans back and forth between windows and you see what everyone's getting up to for the evening. In some very small ways, there's like little interesting pieces going on, but Shock Treatment overall is a little bit disjointed and sadly fairly forgettable. I don't even remember parts of the movie myself, and I've watched it at least 3 times over the course of my life.
That's basically what Streak told me when I mentioned it, and the only thing I've ever seen of Shock Treatment is Little Black Dress.
It's a good number. Mm-hmm. It's like the one good thing that comes out of it. And that's the list for this week. Now it's time for our third discussion topic. We're going to finish things out in our discussion period with the Academy Awards. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. We're talking about their new super duper awesome category, Outstanding Popular Film, which has proven very controversial, despite the fact that the Academy apparently thought, when they initiated this, that they were doing people a favor.
I mean, it's so controversial that even the Razzies had to chime in. And stating that, you're devaluing, the importance of their show, that it's supposed to highlight good movies that people haven't seen so that people might go out and actually see those good movies. And so therefore, if they are devalued, so are the Razzies. Because the Razzies are supposed to be something that no one really cares about, whereas the Academy is supposed to be something we do care about.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how I feel about it personally. I guess it depends on which part of the conversation I'm seeing in my Twitter feed at that point. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, tangent, you can totally follow Manly Battleships at Manly Bats, or you could even follow me.
Shameless self-promotion there. But yeah, I even have my own Twitter. Here I go. I have my own Twitter where I talk about stuff and post awesome pictures of my Pomeranian.
Don't worry, we'll put little overlays here because neither of us actually remember our Twitter handles off the top of our heads.
At Manly Rockstar.
Shh.
No.
Why do you have to know yours? Wow. Way to show up your boss.
Oh, wait, no, I'm actually wrong. That's at Risa Hero, but that's because it's an old one. Yep, I have to show you up. I know my stuff.
Well, I wanted to say it was at Führer King Panda, but then I was like, I'm pretty sure that's too long to be a Twitter handle, although it is how I go on some platforms. I won't name them.
No. Let's just move on. We're talking about popular film.
We were talking about outstanding popular film. So I've noticed in particular a lot of very vocal criticism coming from people who really enjoyed one of the most recent entries into the Marvel Universe, Black Panther. And I saw people go as far as to say, well, this is just their answer so that they don't have to give Black Panther Best Picture. Now, the first thing I want to say about that is, did you see Infinity War? Now, this might just be me, but we did have a video where we kind of reviewed aspects of Black Panther, and I really enjoyed Black Panther. I liked it especially because it was almost like getting another Guardians of the Galaxy, in that it just spun off an entire new set of sub-heroes. It was like, it's basically like it opens up this whole new chapter of the Marvel Universe. There's so much out there in space with Guardians of the Galaxy, and look, there's this whole new sub-chapter right back here on Earth. I don't think it's the best out of the two that were released in this award year, guys. I'm sorry, I don't feel that way. I think Black Panther nudges into the top 5 Marvel movies, but I don't think it's better than Infinity War. That's my personal opinion. That being said, let's talk about the stupidity that is this new category.
Well, what I was going to say was a tangent from how stupid it is. Because for me, it's like people are like, oh, well, this is just an excuse to not give it to Black Panther. Or this is their excuse to not give it to nerd movies. And yet I'm like, yeah, but Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
guys.
Lord of the Rings. Well, I mean, but I guess we'll get into that.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not stupid. I'm not saying that they really... Like, I still think it's stupid and it shouldn't have happened for any reason. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think it's a way out. Like, maybe they should have... I don't know. I always get bumped both ways because I can see both sides of the argument. Like, part of me is like, yeah, maybe we do need something where people who have watched the film actually want to go, hey, I know that film, instead of going, I haven't watched that film yet.
I swear to God, if we can you imagine if this informally becomes the best Chris category?
Oh my God! Now that you mention it,
it's like, oh, all these popular films. Hey, there's a lot of Chris's out there. I hope you know the song that we're talking about. If not, I'll put a link down in the description of the video.
Oh God, it should be. It's like, this one is for Chris Hemsworth. This one's for Chris Pine.
Yeah, it almost feels like that's what we're in store for. I mean, part of me really thinks that it's doing a disservice, because I guess there is. I mean, I agree, part of me does agree that the Academy has always been a little bit more about the art form, and so they don't really take into account popularity, even though there are entries that were super popular in their times. And I mean, at one point, back before we started getting all these huge, let's call them pulp hits, blockbusters, like, say, I don't know, The Fast and the Furious.
Oh. Well, someone was making the joke that it's like, eventually this is just going to devolve into category Fast and the Furious 12.
The category for... maybe that's what they should call it. Just like... Actually, I'm going to be honest here. The part that confuses me, and maybe it's just because I haven't read enough about it, what really are the criteria that they're going to look at? Is it going to be any movie that made more than $500 million? That's what goes in this category for nomination. Out of those, which was the best one?
Oh my God, so it's just going to be Disney?
Oh man, yeah.
It's literally just going to be nothing but Disney.
I think technically speaking, Walt Disney is the recipient of the most Oscars, if you actually count.
Well, now we're giving them more.
Academy Awards, yeah.
But no, it's like...
Like, okay, honoraries and all that.
Marvel, Star Wars, just Disney films in general? Pixar?
My personal criticism is, oh man, I feel like it's actually going to come true. Man, I gotta pull up that old status post that I made about this. I feel like it's going to, I feel like it's kind of like with the best special effects nomination. It's like the best sci-fi movie. No, we're not going to give you best picture. Because I don't know if you realize this, ladies and gentlemen, but there is no science fiction movie that has ever actually won best picture. Contrary to popular opinion by some people, The Shape of Water, which did win this past year, is not a science fiction movie. It has suggestions that could have put it there, but not really. There's nothing in it that is a technological advancement that single-handedly sets the backdrop on which the plot is performed.
It feels more like a fantasy to me.
Yeah.
It really felt like an adult fairy tale more than sci-fi.
That's what it is. It's just as much Beauty and the Beast as it the closest thing, the feel like of the underground and everything did kind of remind me of things like BioShock, but nothing in that movie was out of reach for the people who were in that historical period.
No.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, as much as I would like to kind of adopt it a little bit.
I think a better term for it would be magical realism.
Yeah, that's an interesting term for it.
Because now that I think about it, fantasy, but it reminds me of more of like Mexican cinema. Actually, now that I think about it, oh my god! Now that I've made the connection, I can't undo it. It reminds me of Mexican cinema.
You're just saying that because his last name is Del Toro.
No, actually, it reminds me a lot like Water for Chocolate, except better.
Oh, let's not. Can we not bring up obscure Mexican cinema, please? I remember that movie, and I don't want to talk about it. Let's stay focused.
I'm sorry, tangents.
Well, that's what we're here for. Like, science fiction movies have just gotten snubbed over and over, and what I will tell you now is the same thing that I said a couple of years ago. Guys, I mean, I realize that not everyone saw it, even though the money would say otherwise. I realize that not everyone liked it. I know a couple people who think it's kind of bland. But if James Cameron's Avatar, which is from the director of Titanic, and is the highest grossing film of all time, if that movie, with its technical achievements, it's maybe bland, but it's at least stable script.
Well,
and hitting all the notes that you need for a successful film. If that cannot win Best Picture, a science fiction film is not going to win Best Picture anytime soon. It's just a reality we have to live with. If they wanted a high art sci-fi, they could have picked District 9. If they wanted the real sci-fi blockbuster hit, they could have picked Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. And if they wanted super high, weird art, they could have always gone with 2001: A Space Odyssey. And if they wanted just someone who wasn't James Cameron, because maybe that's what they just don't want to give James Cameron any more awards.
They could need to feed his ego anymore.
They could have picked any of the Star Wars films. So I mean, we're out of options, unless they give the new Dune movie to some crazy avant-garde director who makes it
Shyamalan.
Who makes it black. I was going to say makes it black and white and a silent film, and makes the worms out of, I don't know, like water piping or something. Apparently the Academy will never look at it.
Dude, like, I think even SpongeBob was making fun of this. Because remember the episode we had watching in the hotel at Otakon? They were like, let's go watch a fancy film, not that stuff, that high-grossing superhero movie. And it was just literally them watching a table in black and white for 3 hours. And it was called The Table.
High art, everybody. Don't get me wrong. There's some really interesting, weird films out there that I've enjoyed over the years. I'm an art house film junkie, but
I am.
Well, what is? I mean, I think we really have to start asking ourselves, what is best? I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as to say that financial success makes best film. Mm-mm. To that extent, I think I would probably agree with the Razzies that part of the reason these awards exist is to highlight films that you might not have got a chance to see. But at the same time, if a movie is so beloved by audiences that they keep going to see it over and over again, and it also has the key elements that make a great film, why can't it be up for consideration? So I think it's unfortunate that, in particular with this category's existence, I do not expect, even with 10 spots open, that I don't know, maybe Infinity War will get a nod, maybe, but I don't know if more than one Marvel entry will get into the category. I mean, it has a shot because there are now 10 spots instead of 5 like back in the old days. But I mean, I would also just not be surprised if none of them get in Best Picture.
I was going to say, the thing that worries me is I'm worried if eventually it's just going to become a participation prize. Everybody gets one. Marvel, you get one for, I don't know, the most money. You get one for the most people.
You get an Oscar. And you get an Oscar. Everyone gets an Oscar. M. Night Shyamalan's Oscar speech, which will consist of him coming up to the stage and then spreading wings and flying off. Because what a twist.
Pretty sure that, like, if I was going to compare, say, the Academy to, like, the enemies, even RuPaul has gotten one at this point. So I think they can start seeing what's best even when maybe the mainstream has caught on.
Well, I feel like that's all we have to say about the Academy Awards. We are skeptical.
Yeah, I'm still skeptical.
Now we're heading into our final segment, which is going to be That's Pretty Cool. That's Pretty Cool is at the end of the show, and we try to highlight some interesting little factoid that is from our personal life or that we've run across in the course of our panel research that we feel you'll enjoy. I've picked something personal from my history. My personal family doctor has finally retired as of, I think, a year and a half ago. But he, as long as I lived in Pennsylvania, he was my family doctor. Now, he was at that point had already been bought out. He was part of the wider, you may or may not have heard of it, the Geisinger Health System. So they finally pressured him to retire, and now I think he's off doing yet another practice in like another county. But he has been around so long. Right out of medical school is when he first started in his like early 20s, I think, back when it was a little bit easier to go through medical school. He started his practice, and the first patient of my family he worked with was my great-grandmother. He's actually a specialist in pediatric health. So the reason that he went in for it is because he was actually my grandmother's doctor, but he also started being the doctor for her mother as well. And then he was the doctor for my mother. And then my mom started bringing myself and my siblings to him once we moved back to Pennsylvania after my father got out of the Army. His name is Dr. Ernest Campbell. Dr. Ernest Campbell, in terms of his own personal medical career, is most well known not for being my family doctor, but for being the man who first made the connection of what was causing Legionnaire's disease. If you're not familiar with the 1976 Philadelphia Legionnaires breakout, what had happened was all these people were starting to get sick, and they couldn't figure out what the originating cause was. As it turned out, Dr. Campbell, 3 of the victims of the disease were his patients, and he noticed that all 3 of them had been attending the Legionnaires Conference down in Philadelphia. So he phoned up the Pennsylvania Health Department, and they quickly figured out that was the one thing that all these people had in common. Over the course of the entire outbreak, I think it was 182 people got sick and 29 died. But it was through that connection that they were able to start tracking these people down and isolate them in order to keep them from spreading it out any farther. Because it was that there was the common point was I think it was the air vents or the circulation system that was there at the time was just riddled with the contagion that caused Legionnaire's disease. So the reason that I brought this to your attention is not just for this interesting piece of medical history. My family doctor is the man who first discovered cotton plague. Do with that what you will.
Clearly, it makes sense of why you've been so against cotton plague.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to bid you good night. This has been Mr. Panda.
And this has been Rockstar.
From the Manly Battleships. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of Duelists Drunkards, the podcast where there are not any duelists, but there are plenty of drunkards.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.